Hello beautiful people and welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, my name is JC and today we are going to talk about leading yourself first in order to lead others according to Extreme Ownership by Jocko, Willink and Leif Babin. In short, this book is about leadership, as simple as that. If you think that you're in no position to apply leadership in your life and then that this book is not going to be of use to you, let me tell you that you are wrong. The main principle of extreme ownership is that you and only you are responsible for every outcome of every single task that you take on. It doesn't matter if you do it alone or if you're working with a team. So imagine you're working on a group project at work and things turn out to be a complete disaster. You could definitely blame that one person who didn't do his research correctly or the other guy who didn't prepare enough for the presentation. Or you could blame yourself. Extreme ownership is about taking control of everything in your life. So maybe they didn't do their jobs well because you failed to explain to them how to do them correctly. So next time you'll take the time to walk them through the whole process so that they understand what they have to do. This type of mentality requires you to check your ego. At first, it will not be easy to take your whole team's failure as your own. But there's always something that you could have done differently to prevent it. And in the future, you will have learned from your past mistakes and do a far better job. Remember that nobody likes a victim or somebody that only points fingers and takes no responsibility for their action. This kind of mentality was developed because Jocko and Leif, the authors, are both retired Navy SEALs who now own a company that specializes in taking everything that they learned about leadership during their time serving in Iraq and they teach it to modern day businesses. At first I thought that because their leading experience comes from the front lines of war, that the principles they're trying to teach us wouldn't translate that well to a modern day environment such as an office space because, well, they are very different situations. But the authors know exactly what they are doing. And let me tell you why. Extreme Ownership is 322 pages long, so it's a pretty medium-sized book. The main content of this book is divided into 3 parts, and each of these parts is further divided into 4 chapters. So there's a total of 12 chapters. Part number 1 is called Winning the War Within, and it talks about the basic principles that you should have if you want to be an efficient leader. Part number 2 is called The Laws of Combat, and it covers how good teamwork will help you achieve your goals faster. And lastly, part number 3 is called Sustaining Victory, and it's about the balance that a leader should have if in the long run he wants to continue having results and not get burned out. What I personally enjoyed about this book is how the chapters are written. Each one starts with a personal experience of either Jocko or Leif about something that happened during their time serving at war. It's normally a difficulty that they were going through at the time. They explain the what, the where, the why, and the who of what was happening and how they managed to get on top of the situation using the extreme ownership mentality. In the second part of each chapter, they explain and break down the principle of the story so that you know exactly what they're getting at. And lastly, they give you an actual example of how they have taught and applied this principle to a modern day company that they have worked with. Let me give you the example of my favorite chapter, which is No Bad Teams, Only Bad Leaders. They start by telling a story of Hell Week during Navy SEAL training. Hell Week is basically 5 days in which the instructors try to break down students with gruesome mental and physical challenges in order to see who's fit to be a SEAL and who's not. During this particular Hell Week, the students were divided into teams of 7, with one of them being tasked as the leader. Each team had to carry an almost 200-pound heavy rubber boat with them everywhere they went. If they were supposed to run miles on the beach, then they had to carry the boat with them. And if they had to swim in the ocean, they also had to attach the boat to them and swim with it. So as you can imagine, it's torturous for the students. During all the drills that they had to do, one team always came in first, which was boat crew number 2. The prize for coming in first was that you got to sit out the next race and rest. They weren't allowed to sleep, but under the conditions, I think that just sitting down would have been marvelous. And while team number 2 always came in the first place, there was another team that in almost every single exercise came in dead last. Boat crew number 6. And as you can imagine, that did not please instructors at all. Crew number 6 was constantly being scolded and yelled at. That put even more pressure into them, which made them perform even worse. To this, one of the instructors had a brilliant idea, which was to change the leaders from team number 2 and team number 6 and see what would happen. After a brief talk with both of the leaders, they accepted the request of the instructor. Of course, boat crew number 2 leader wasn't very happy with the idea. He had worked very hard in order to develop a good relationship with his team and they were performing fantastic. while on the other hand, the former leader of team number 6 was as happy as you could get. He really thought that life had dealt him a very bad hand with his team and that there was nothing he could do to turn things around. And now the stars had aligned in his favor. What happened next was surprising to say the least. Both crew number 6 under new leadership started coming in first in every single exercise, followed closely by team number 2. I find it amazing that just by swapping one person on the team, the whole thing seemed to change in their favor. So now, the principle of the story, as the name says, is that there is no bad teams, only bad leaders. If the one person a team depends on doesn't have the right mentality, he doesn't know how to get through the situation they're facing, or he believes that his team is no good, then they are doomed. And so the application to business, as you can probably see, is very straightforward. The story is that the authors were hired by a technology company so that they could teach extreme ownership to their managers. The CEO told them that they were coming out with a new project, but things weren't going very well. In fact, they were almost broke. So after the presentation, Leif discovered that one of the managers was not very happy with the extreme ownership mentality. He was the person who had developed the new product and was managing the team behind it. But he didn't want to take any of the blame. He just wanted to blame the market and his team for his failures. And when Leif confronted him and told him that it was his responsibility as a leader, the manager said, and I quote, "We may not be winning, but we were making the right decisions." I mean, I'm not an expert, but even I can see that that's simply not true. After the day ended, the manager went to the CEO's office and told him that he didn't believe in the extreme ownership mentality and that he thought it was a waste of time. It didn't take long for the president to realize that his problem was not that the product was at fault, but that the manager wasn't doing his job correctly. So he decided to fire him. Later on, he hired somebody that actually took responsibility for the project and managed to turn things around. So the principle is, there's no bad teams, only bad leaders. The thing with this kind of books is that if you're not willing to apply the knowledge it taught you, and you just want to add another name to the list of books that you've read, then it's a waste of time. I haven't read a lot of books about leadership, but from what I can tell, this is one of the best, if not the best that there is. It's very entertaining, it's easy to read, it's fun, and most importantly, it works. I can personally testify that the principles that this book teaches you actually work, because I have used them in my life several times over now. If you want to learn more about extreme ownership without reading the book, then there's a fantastic TED Talk by Jocko, Willink, one of the authors, called Extreme Ownership on YouTube. It has over, I believe, 2.4 million views as of the release date of this video. Or you could go and listen to his podcast called The Jocko Podcast, in which he talks about his daily life, his time at war, and extreme ownership. But for now, if I had to grade this book, I would give it 5 stars, a 10 out of 10, and a seal of approval. For me, it's one of those books that you should always have in your desk drawer, just in case you come across a difficult situation. It's just that good. So please, please, please do yourself a favor and read this book. I promise that the principles you learn will definitely change your life. And that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any recommendations for the channel, be sure to leave them down below in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You would do me a huge favor as I'm just starting now. I'll see you all next week, and I hope you have a fantastic day. And remember to always keep on growing.